All right, we're going to subtract mixed numbers. So we have 5 and 7/8 minus 4 and 3/4. So the first step is we need to first find a common denominator between 8 and 4. Remember, the top is the numerator and the bottom is the denominator. So our first step is to make sure that these are the same, and we call that a common denominator. So to find a common denominator, we're going to think about the multiples of 8 and 4. And remember, a multiple is just skip counting by that particular number or counting by that number. So the multiples of 8 would be 8, 16, and 24. Another thing is, let's figure out the multiples of 4. So we're going to count by 4s. It's 4, 8, 12. Now we're going to look for the number that's common between both, and that is the least between them both. And what I mean by least is the one that shows up first that's the same. So if you look, 8 shows up first, and so we call that the least common denominator. So we're going to use that to rename these fractions. So I'm going to write 8 here. Bring your whole numbers down. Don't forget to bring your whole numbers down. And now, since 8 is already in the first fraction, I can just leave that the same, because basically I would be multiplying by 1. So I get the same fraction again. Here I have 1, 2. So that means I need to multiply 4 by 2. And what I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 2 is 8. So now my second step was to rename the fractions. So now I've renamed those fractions using the common denominator. And you rename those fractions by multiplying. So next step, third step, is now we're going to subtract, and we're only going to subtract the numerators, because remember, those are the numerators, and then we're also going to subtract our whole numbers. So I always like to subtract the numerators first, and then after that I'll subtract the whole numbers. So 7 minus 6 is 1. The denominator always stays the same, so that stays 8. Now we subtract those whole numbers, because remember, that's our next step. Subtract the whole numbers. So 5 minus 4 is 1. Last step always is check to see if you can simplify one last time. So if you see here, I know that I can't simplify anymore because this is what we call a unit fractions. And unit fractions mean there's always a 1 on the top and some sort of number on the bottom. And you can't simplify unit fractions because they only have a common factor of 1. So this particular problem is simplified, and that's my final answer, 1 1/8.